You wake up and the world feels too loud. The news, the demands, the constant chatter of a society that never stops talking but rarely says anything meaningful. You drag yourself through another day and everyone around you seems fine. They're productive, they're motivated, they're thriving. But you feel like you're drowning in shallow water. You look around and everything seems normal. People rushing to work with their coffee cups and their purposeful strides. Your phone buzzes with the same recycled energy, the same hollow optimism, the same demands disguised as opportunities. And the world keeps telling you, just push through it, just be more disciplined, just try harder. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you, though I have spent my life's work trying to understand it. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are not failing at life. You are a sensitive soul trying to survive in a world that has forgotten how to feel. And the exhaustion you carry is not weakness. It's the natural response of a deep mind forced to live on the surface. I have come to understand this through decades of working with patients, through my own struggles with what others called my difficult nature, and through careful observation of the human psyche. I have seen that some people are born with what I call a heightened sensitivity to the unconscious, to meaning, to the deeper currents of existence. These are not the majority. These are not the ones who can easily adapt to a world built for shallow productivity and surface-level engagement. These are the ones who feel everything more intensely, who need silence to think, who crave depth in a world obsessed with speed. If you've ever felt like you don't belong in this fast-paced, always-on, perpetually optimistic society, it's not because something is wrong with you, it's because something is wrong with the world. And your soul knows it. Your sensitivity is not a bug, it's a feature. But it's a feature trying to function in a system that was never designed for people like you. This is not about making excuses. This is about understanding, because once you understand what's really happening, everything changes. The shame lifts, the self-blame dissolves, and you begin to see your so-called laziness for what it really is, a form of resistance, a form of protection, a form of wisdom that your deeper self is trying to communicate to you. Take a deep breath. I want to explore this with you, and you are not alone. For most of human history, life moved at the pace of seasons. There was time for reflection, for contemplation, for the slow processing of experience. Communities were small enough that every person mattered, every story had weight, every emotion had space to breathe and be understood. I lived through the transition from this older world into the modern one. I watched as industrialization and urbanization began to reshape not just how we work, but how we think, how we feel, how we relate to ourselves and each other. And I saw something that most people missed. The cost. I called it the collective neurosis, a society-wide disconnection from meaning, from depth, from the unconscious wisdom that had guided humanity for millennia. What replaced it was efficiency, productivity, conformity, and the illusion that external achievement could fill the void left by this disconnection. But some people couldn't make the switch. Some people's nervous systems, their souls, their very essence was still wired for depth, for meaning, for the slow cultivation of inner life. These people didn't adapt well to the new world. They became what society labeled as lazy, unmotivated, difficult, or sensitive in a way that was somehow seen as weakness. I saw this differently. I recognized that these individuals weren't failing to adapt. They were unconsciously refusing to participate in a system that would require them to abandon their essential nature. Their apparent laziness was actually a form of unconscious wisdom. Their bodies and souls were protecting them from a way of life that would slowly kill everything that made them who they are. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that your energy disappears when you're doing things that don't align with your deeper values? That you can work for hours on something meaningful but feel drained after 30 minutes of busy work? That you can have deep conversations all night but feel exhausted after small talk at a networking event? This is not laziness. This is your unconscious mind protecting your essential self from activities that would fragment and drain your life force. Your sensitivity is not making you weak, it's making you selective. And in a world that demands you say yes to everything, this selectivity feels like rebellion. But here's where it gets complicated, and I have seen this pattern countless times in my practice, because this same sensitivity that protects you also isolates you. You look around and everyone else seems to be thriving in the very environment that depletes you. They're networking with ease, producing content without existential crisis, climbing ladders that you can't even see the point of climbing. And slowly you begin to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you are lazy, maybe you are broken, maybe you just need to try harder, be more disciplined, push through the resistance. So you try, you force yourself into their mold, you adopt their strategies, their mindset, their pace. And what happens? You burn out faster than anyone, because you're not just working against external demands, you're working against your own nature. You're trying to run software that was never designed for your operating system. And the crash is inevitable. This is where my insight becomes revolutionary, if I may say so. I understood that for sensitive souls, the path to health is not adaptation to a sick society. It's the courage to honor their own nature, even when that nature puts them at odds with the world around them. Your laziness is not laziness. It's your soul's way of saying no to a life that would diminish you. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to start listening. You've learned to apologize for needing more time to process, to feel guilty for requiring silence to think, to shame yourself for not being able to keep up with the relentless pace of modern productivity culture. You've internalized the message that your need for depth, for meaning, for slower rhythms is somehow a character flaw. But I tell you something different. You're not failing to adapt to a healthy environment. You're successfully resisting an environment that is fundamentally hostile to human depth and authentic feeling. We live in what I call the age of the masses, an era where individual uniqueness is flattened into demographic categories, where complex inner life is reduced to personality types, where the richness of human experience is commodified into content, products, and brand identities. In this world, everything moves fast because depth takes time, and time doesn't scale. Everything stays on the surface because diving deep requires individual attention. And individual attention doesn't convert to mass engagement. Everything becomes a performance because authentic being is messy, unpredictable, and doesn't photograph well. Your sensitivity makes you allergic to this world, not because you're weak, but because you're still connected to something that most people have lost. You're still in touch with what I call the collective unconscious, the deeper layer of psyche that connects you to meaning, to archetype, to the timeless patterns that give life its significance. When you're in a meeting that could have been an email, your unconscious mind is screaming, your nervous system is overwhelmed. When you're forced to make small talk about nothing, your soul is starving. This is not social anxiety, this is not introversion, this is not depression, though it might look like all of these things. This is a sensitive system responding appropriately to an insensitive environment. Your withdrawal is not pathology, it's wisdom. But the world doesn't see it that way. The world sees your need for solitude and calls it antisocial. It sees your need for meaning and calls it impractical. It sees your need for authenticity and calls it difficult. And slowly you begin to see yourself through their eyes. You start medicating your sensitivity, not necessarily with drugs, though sometimes that too, but with distractions, with busy work, with the same shallow engagement that depletes you. You try to become someone you're not because being who you are feels too costly in a world that doesn't value what you have to offer. I call this the persona trap, the false self that we construct to fit into society's expectations. For sensitive souls, the persona becomes a survival mechanism. You learn to perform energy you don't have. You learn to fake enthusiasm for things that bore you. You learn to suppress your deeper questions because they make other people uncomfortable. And what happens to your true self? It goes underground. It becomes what I call the shadow. All the parts of you that don't fit the acceptable image get pushed into unconsciousness. Your need for depth, your capacity for feeling, your connection to meaning, your requirement for slower rhythms. But the shadow doesn't disappear, it just expresses itself in other ways. Through unexplained fatigue, through mysterious health issues, through depression that has no clear cause, through a sense of emptiness that no amount of achievement can fill. Your laziness is your shadow trying to protect what's left of your authentic self. It's your unconscious unconscious mind refusing to participate in activities that would further fragment your wholeness. And until you understand this, you'll keep fighting against the very mechanism that's trying to save you. The question is not how to overcome your laziness. The question is how to honor the wisdom it contains. How to create a life that works with your sensitivity rather than against it. How to find your place in a world that wasn't built for people like you. And that's where my most revolutionary insight comes in. The idea that your sensitivity is not a personal problem to be solved. It's a collective gift to be expressed. But first, you need to understand what you're really dealing with. Have you ever noticed how certain environments drain you while others energize you? How some conversations leave you feeling more alive while others leave you feeling like you've been hollowed out? How some activities flow effortlessly while others feel like pushing water uphill? This is not random. This is your unconscious mind communicating with you through your energy levels. I understood that sensitive individuals have a different relationship with energy than the general population. Their vitality is not unlimited, it's precious and it's selective. While others can power through activities that don't align with their values, sensitive souls cannot. Their energy is directly connected to meaning. When they're engaged in work that matters to them, with people who see them, in environments that honor their depth, they can work with incredible intensity and focus. But when they're forced into situations that violate their essential nature, their energy simply vanishes. This is not willpower weakness. This is energetic wisdom. Your body and psyche are protecting your life force from being scattered across activities that don't serve your deeper purpose. But in a culture that treats all activities as equally valid, as long as they're productive, this selectivity looks like laziness. I call this the problem of modern education and work. We've created systems that assume all minds work the same way, that respond to the same motivations, that can be productive in the same environments. But sensitive individuals require what I call individual consideration. They need work that connects to their personal meaning system. They need environments that don't overwhelm their nervous systems. They need relationships that honor their depth. When these needs aren't met, they don't just become less productive, they become less themselves. Their connection to their own unconscious wisdom weakens. Their access to their creative and intuitive capacities diminishes. They begin to live from the surface of their minds rather than from their deeper knowing. And this is where the real tragedy occurs, because sensitive souls are often the carriers of what I call the cultural function. They're the ones who create art that moves people, who ask questions that need to be asked, who hold space for emotions that others can't handle, who see possibilities that others miss. When they are forced to suppress their sensitivity to fit into productivity culture, we don't just lose their individual contributions, we lose access to perspectives and insights that our collective consciousness desperately needs. Their laziness is not just personal protection, it's cultural resistance. But this resistance comes at a cost, because when you can't find a way to express your gifts in the world, when you can't find work that honors your nature, when you can't find communities that value what you have to offer, you begin to doubt the value of your sensitivity itself. You start to wonder if maybe the world is right, maybe depth is impractical, maybe meaning is a luxury, or maybe your need for authenticity is just self-indulgence. And slowly you begin to abandon the very qualities that make you who you are. This is what I call the sacrifice of the self, and it's happening to sensitive souls everywhere. They're trying to cure their laziness by becoming someone they're not. But the cure is worse than the disease, because when you abandon your essential nature, you don't become more energetic, you become more depleted, you don't become more motivated, you become more depressed. The path forward is not adaptation, it's integration. It's learning to honor your sensitivity while finding ways to express it that serve both you and the world. And this requires a completely different approach to laziness, to productivity, to success itself. You've been told that the solution to your laziness is discipline. More structure, more accountability, more willpower, more pushing through resistance. But what if this advice is not just wrong, but actively harmful to people like you? I discovered something that modern productivity culture refuses to acknowledge. For sensitive individuals, forced productivity is not just ineffective, it's traumatic. It disconnects you from your own inner guidance system. It teaches you to override your body's wisdom. It fragments your psyche by demanding that you act against your own nature. Think about the last time you tried to force yourself to be productive when everything in you was saying no. What happened? Did you produce work you were proud of? Did you feel energized afterward? Or did you feel like you'd done violence to yourself, like you'd betrayed something essential? This is because sensitive souls don't operate on willpower. They operate on what I call psychic energy or libido. This energy flows naturally toward activities and situations that are aligned with their deeper self. When they try to redirect this energy through force, they create what I call a complex, a split in the psyche that generates anxiety, depression, and what looks like laziness. Your apparent lack of motivation is not a character defect. It's your psyche's way of protecting you from further fragmentation. Every time you force yourself to do something that doesn't align with your essential nature, you weaken your connection to your own inner authority. You teach yourself not to trust your own instincts, and in a world that demands constant productivity, this creates a terrible bind. You can't maintain the pace that society expects, but you also can't give yourself permission to move at your own rhythm, so you exist in a state of constant internal conflict, part of you pushing, part of you resisting, neither part getting what it needs. My solution was radical for my time and remains radical now. Instead of trying to fix your laziness, honor it as information. Instead of pushing through resistance, investigate what it's trying to tell you. Instead of forcing productivity, cultivate what I call active imagination, the ability to dialogue with the deeper parts of yourself that are trying to guide you. This doesn't mean giving up on accomplishment. It means accomplishing things in a way that works with your nature rather than against it. Sensitive souls are capable of incredible productivity, but only when they're working on something that matters to them, in an environment that supports them at a rhythm that honors their need for processing time. But this requires a complete reframe of what productivity means. Instead of measuring output, you measure alignment. Instead of focusing on quantity, you focus on quality. Instead of asking how much did I do, you ask how true was I to myself while doing it. This is not self-indulgence, this is self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of sustainable productivity for sensitive souls. When you honor your own nature, you access energy reserves that you didn't know you had. When you work with your sensitivity rather than against it, you produce work that has depth, meaning, and lasting impact. But making this shift requires courage. The courage to disappoint people who expect you to be someone you're not. The courage to work differently than everyone around you. The courage to value your own inner authority over external validation. And most importantly, the courage to see your sensitivity not as a burden to be managed, but as a gift to be cultivated. Because in a world that's becoming increasingly superficial, increasingly disconnected, increasingly numb, your capacity for depth is not just personally valuable, it's collectively essential. You are not lazy, you are not broken, you are not failing at life. You are a sensitive soul learning to navigate a world that doesn't understand sensitivity. And your apparent laziness is actually your psyche's attempt to preserve what's most valuable about you. The question is not how to overcome your laziness. The question is how to honor the wisdom it contains while finding ways to express your gifts that serve both you and the world. Because the world needs what you have to offer. But first you need to stop trying to offer it in ways that diminish you. Your sensitivity is not the problem. The problem is that you've been trying to live as if you weren't sensitive, and that's a betrayal of everything that makes you who you are. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognizes the truth of what I've been exploring throughout my life's work. Perhaps you're feeling a mixture of relief and grief. Relief that finally someone is naming what you've experienced. Grief for all the years you spent thinking you were broken. You are not broken. You never were. You are exactly what the world needs, even if the world doesn't know it yet. Your depth in a shallow culture, your sensitivity in a numb society, your need for meaning in a world obsessed with metrics. But recognition is just the beginning. The real work is learning to live authentically as a sensitive soul in a world that wasn't designed for you. This means creating boundaries that protect your energy. It means choosing work that aligns with your values. It means surrounding yourself with people who see and appreciate your gifts. Most importantly, it means developing what I call conscious relationship with your own laziness. Instead of seeing it as an enemy to be defeated, see it as a messenger to be understood. When you feel that familiar energy drain, instead of pushing through, pause and ask, what is this trying to tell me? What boundary needs to be set? What need isn't being met? What part of my authentic self is being suppressed? Your laziness is not random, it's intelligent. It's your unconscious mind's way of protecting what's most precious about you from a world that would consume it without appreciation. And when you learn to listen to this intelligence, when you learn to honor your own rhythms and needs, something miraculous happens. You stop being lazy in the ways that matter. You find energy for work that aligns with your purpose. You discover motivation for activities that feed your soul. You access creativity that you didn't know you possessed. Not because you've overcome your sensitivity, but because you've learned to work with it. This is not easy. It requires you to live differently than most people around you. It requires you to value your own inner authority over external expectations. It requires you to believe that your sensitivity is a strength, even when the world treats it as a weakness. But this is your path, not the path of forcing yourself into someone else's mold, but the path of becoming more fully yourself. And as you walk this path, you discover something that productivity culture never tells you. The most meaningful contributions come not from pushing through resistance, but from honoring what makes you unique. Your laziness is not your enemy, it's your ally in the quest to live authentically. And in a world that desperately needs authentic voices, authentic perspectives, authentic depth, your commitment to honoring your own nature is not just personal healing, it's cultural service. You are not lazy, you are selective. You are not unmotivated, you are guided by deeper values than surface productivity. You are not broken, you are whole in a way that this broken world struggles to recognize. Keep listening to that inner voice that says no to what diminishes you. Keep trusting your need for meaning over metrics. Keep believing that your sensitivity is a gift, even when it feels like a burden. Because the world needs sensitive souls who refuse to be numbed, who insist on depth in a shallow culture, who protect meaning in a meaningless time. Your apparent laziness is actually resistance, and that resistance might be the most important work you ever do. I have spent my life studying the human psyche, and I can tell you with certainty, you are not lazy. You are awake in a sleeping world, and your wakefulness, however uncomfortable, is exactly what we need.